Tonight's major sporting event turned into a battleground for cultural and political conflict, with tensions escalating between different ideological camps. As the game unfolded, it became evident that the event was more than just a competition, it was a reflection of the country's ongoing cultural struggles. Despite efforts by certain factions to dismiss or discredit the halftime entertainment, the show drew record-breaking viewership. Estimates suggest that over 125 million people tuned in, with some figures reaching as high as 135 million, marking it as one of the most-watched halftime performances in history. This demonstrates that attempts to boycott or undermine the show largely failed, revealing a disconnect between political narratives and audience engagement. Meanwhile, President Trump voiced strong criticisms via social media, calling the halftime performance terrible and an affront to American standards. He argued that the show lacked inspiration and was inappropriate for young viewers, framing it as a sign of declining American greatness. Trump also used this moment to push his political messaging, calling for the NFL to change certain rules he deemed problematic, and emphasizing his usual themes of national pride and success. However, Trump's critique was met with indifference in some circles. The alternative programming offered by groups like Turning Point USA, which staged a counter-event featuring Kid Rock, failed to attract significant attention. Reports indicated that even Trump himself did not tune into the event, suggesting that the conservative attempt at cultural counter-programming was ineffective. In fact, the audience largely supported the halftime show featuring Bad Bunny, whose performance resonated with viewers across demographics.
There have been some pretty big shifts here.
Yeah, these guys are swingers. That's what we're talking about here. Take a look here. Generation Z. John liked that. Gen Z, party ID margin, Dems versus the GOP. In 2024, look at this. It was just a 6-point margin between the Democrats and Republicans. Democrats just led by 6 points. Very small. Remember, Donald Trump did very well for a Republican candidate amongst the youngest part of the electorate. But take a look here. 2025. Hello. A huge widening of the lead for Democrats among Generation Z, tripling their lead on party identification from 6 all the way up to 20. That was, in fact, the largest shift, considerably more so than any other group. Yes, there was a shift in the overall electorate, but this more than double the shift that we saw among the electorate at large towards the Democratic Party.
Okay, and we said it was decisive for Donald Trump. How have opinions shifted toward Donald Trump among this group?
Okay, so this, in some ways, you might say this, this doesn't necessarily apply to Donald Trump. It absolutely does apply to Donald Trump. I mean, he has just fallen off a cliff when it comes to Generation Z. Look at this. Donald Trump's net approval rating in February of 2025. John said it right. Wow.
This was actually a month into the administration.
This was a month into the administration. He was at plus 10 points on the net approval rating. He was on the right side of the ledger. Look at this. Falling off that cliff, that is a drop of 42 points to negative 32 points on the net approval rating amongst Generation Z. My goodness gracious, this, as I said, is a very swingy group, and it has swung very much away from Donald.
Many viewers expressed confusion over the bilingual nature of Bad Bunny's set, with some commentators joking about the lack of English subtitles. But overall, the performance was widely appreciated for its energy and cultural authenticity, symbolizing a shift in the cultural landscape. Critics and social media users pointed out that the right's messaging efforts seemed increasingly disconnected from the realities of popular culture, which is moving in a more diverse and inclusive direction. This cultural shift is also reflected in recent polling data. For the first time in years, polls show a significant change in political attitudes among Generation Z voters. The gap between Democrats and Republicans in party identification among this demographic has widened considerably, with Democrats leading by up to 20 points, tripling previous margins. This represents a major realignment, especially considering that Trump had previously performed well with younger voters. Trump's approval ratings among Generation Z have plummeted as well. Just a year ago, he enjoyed a modest positive net approval rating, but recent figures show a sharp decline of over 40 points. This indicates that younger voters are increasingly turning away from Trump and the Republican Party, signaling a potential long-term demographic shift that could reshape electoral politics. The political divide extends beyond polling. Conservative media outlets and social media personalities have reacted with frustration and derision toward the cultural trends they dislike. Some have mocked the use of non-English languages in mainstream American entertainment, accusing performers like Bad Bunny of outshining traditional American icons. Critics have accused these figures of hypocrisy, claiming they champion free expression but oppose artists who challenge their cultural norms. Advocates for unity emphasize messages of collective identity and shared values. They argue that a focus on inclusivity and mutual understanding is more sustainable and appealing in a changing cultural landscape. Recent elections and polling data suggest that the public is increasingly receptive to such messages, which could spell trouble for the divisive strategies favored by some political figures. As the country navigates this period of cultural transformation, the real challenge for political leaders will be to adapt their messaging accordingly. The days of relying solely on identity-based appeals and inflammatory rhetoric may be numbered, as Americans demonstrate a desire for unity over division. Observers note that the political environment is shifting rapidly. Traditional party loyalties are evolving, especially among younger voters who are more diverse and socially conscious than previous generations. The cultural battles of tonight's game may be just the beginning of a broader realignment in American politics, one that favors inclusivity and shared purpose over polarization.